I spent 11 hours the night before that baby shower making everything perfect. I folded 200 paper flowers by hand. I drove 40 minutes to pick up a custom cake I had ordered 3 weeks in advance. I paid for the venue deposit out of my own account because my sister-in-law said she was short that month. And when I walked through that door the next morning with my arms full and my back already hurting, the first thing I saw was a woman sitting in the chair I had decorated with ribbon and fresh flowers. The chair meant for the guest of honor, the chair I had stayed up until midnight finishing, and that woman was not the mother-to-be. That woman was sleeping with my husband. The worst part was not that she was there. The worst part was that every single person in that room already knew who she was, and not one of them had warned me. Before this story goes further, I want to ask you something honestly. If you walked into a room and realized that the people you had given the most to had been quietly protecting the person hurting you most, what would you do? Would you turn around and walk out? Would you smile and stay? Would you wait and gather your evidence before you made your move? I want you to sit with that question because Nadia sat with it too, and the answer she finally chose changed everything. Stay with this story. You are going to want to hear how it ends. My name is Nadia. I am 34 years old. I have been married for 7 years. I have a job I built from the ground up, a small event planning business I started from my kitchen table with one laptop and a notebook full of ideas. I grew it into something real. I have a home I helped design, a garden I planted myself, and a marriage I believed in with everything I had. I say believed because that word is past tense now, and the story of how it became past tense is exactly what I am about to tell you. My husband's name is Marcus. He is handsome in the way that people notice immediately and remember. He has the kind of smile that makes people trust him before he has earned it. I trusted him too. For 7 years, I trusted him. I cooked dinners after long work days. I supported his career shifts, including the year he decided to leave a stable job to chase a business idea that never took off. I stayed through the financial strain of that year without complaint. I covered the mortgage payments for 8 straight months while his income was nearly nothing. I told him that partnerships meant something. I told him I was not going anywhere. I meant it, every word. Marcus has a sister named Delia. Delia is 4 years younger than him and has always been the family favorite, the one who could do no wrong, the one whose life events were treated like national celebrations while everyone else's moments were treated like obligations. When Delia announced she was pregnant, the whole family responded like a royal announcement had been made. Group chats exploded. His mother cried on a video call. His aunt started planning things before Delia had even finished her first trimester. And somehow, without anyone asking me directly, it was simply assumed that I would be the one to actually handle everything. I want to be honest about this part because I think it matters. I was not angry about being asked to help. Helping was something I genuinely did not mind. Event planning was my profession and I cared about doing things well. What bothered me looking back now was how it was never really a question. It was a transfer of responsibility dressed up as family trust. Delia would mention what she wanted, his mother would nod and say Nadia will handle it. Marcus would look at me with that easy smile and say you are so good at this, as if complimenting my capability was the same as asking for my consent. I handled it anyway. I found the venue, a garden event space about 25 minutes from Delia's neighborhood. I negotiated the rental price. I designed the decorations myself and ordered everything in advance. I created a timeline, a guest list tracker, a catering plan. I stayed up late on multiple nights making handmade paper flowers in the colors Delia had chosen. I put a deposit on the venue with my personal account because Delia said she would pay me back the following week. The following week came and went. I did not bring it up because I did not want to create tension over money. 2 weeks before the shower, I called Marcus to tell him I needed help picking up some of the supply orders because my car was too small. He said he would handle it. He did not. I ended up renting a cargo van for one afternoon to pick everything up myself. I did not complain, I kept going. Now I need to tell you about the woman in the chair. Her name, as I would come to learn it, was Simone. She had been in Marcus's life for a long time, not in the way a colleague is in your life or the way a friend's girlfriend appears at birthday gatherings. She had been in my husband's L. Ife in the other way, the intimate way, the secret way, the way that involves deleted messages and late work excuses and a second phone that appears briefly on the counter one morning and disappears before you can ask about it. I had noticed things. I want to be clear about that. I am not someone who is completely blind. I noticed the change in his phone habits. I noticed the way certain evenings he came home a little too relaxed, a little too careful about where he sat and what he said. I noticed that he stopped reaching for my hand the way he used to. I noticed a receipt once for a restaurant we had never been to together on a night he said he had a late work meeting. I picked it up and looked at it and then I put it back down. I told myself there was an explanation. I told myself I was not the kind of woman who became paranoid over paper. I convinced myself that 7 years of loyalty meant something real, that a man who had seen me at my worst and stayed would not quietly be living a second life. I was wrong, but I was not ready to know that yet. 3 days before the shower, Marcus's mother called me. Her name is Barbara, and she is a woman who has spent a long time perfecting the art of saying things without quite saying them. She called to tell me the shower was going to be wonderful and that the family was so grateful for everything I was doing. I said thank you. She paused in that particular way she had, the kind of pause that means something is being decided on the other end, and then she said she hoped I was feeling flexible about the guest list because Delia had added a few people at the last minute. I said that was fine, that I could adjust the seating and the catering count. Barbara said wonderful and then moved on quickly to something else. I did not think about that phone call the way I should have. I was busy. I had a decorating timeline, a cake pickup schedule, and two other client projects running at the same time. I filed it away as routine. I should not have. The morning of the shower, I woke up at 5:30. I loaded my car with the supplies I had pre-sorted the night before. I drove to the bakery and picked up the cake, which was a three-tier almond and vanilla cake decorated with pressed edible flowers because Delia had a whole vision board she had shown me on her phone. I drove to the venue and let myself in with the key the manager had given me the previous day. I set up for 2.5 hours alone. I arranged the tables, draped the fabric runners, placed the paper flowers, set out the favor bags I had assembled one by one, hung the welcome sign I had hand-lettered myself, and centered the guest of honor chair with the ribbon arch I had built the night before. That chair was the centerpiece of the whole setup. I had spent the most time on it. The ribbon work took me the better part of an evening, and the flowers attached to the frame were fresh, which meant I had picked them up that same morning so they would not wilt. It was beautiful. I stepped back and looked at it when I finished and felt that particular satisfaction that comes from doing something well, the kind of satisfaction that belongs to the work itself. Then the guests started arriving. I was greeting people at the door when I saw Delia come in with her mother and a small group. I noticed that Delia was avoiding looking directly at me, which I registered but did not understand yet. Marcus's mother Barbara gave me a hug that felt slightly too tight and slightly too brief at the same time. I thought she seemed nervous. I thought maybe she was just tired. Then more guests arrived. I moved to the side of the room to check on the catering setup, and that is when I finally turned and saw clearly what had happened to the chair. Someone was already sitting in it. Not Delia, a woman I had never seen at a family event before, a woman who looked completely comfortable in that chair, as if she belonged there, as if someone had specifically invited her there and specifically placed her there. She was laughing with two of Delia's friends who were leaning toward her like she was someone they already knew. She had a drink in her hand, and her body language was the opposite of uncomfortable. She looked like she had been expected, because she had been. I stood there for a moment, and something strange happened in my body. Not tears, not shaking, a kind of quieting. Like all the noise of the last few months lowered itself suddenly, and the silence underneath got very loud. I turned to one of the cousins I had spoken to before. Her name was Petra, and she was the kind of person who was bad at hiding things because she cared too much about everyone liking her. I asked her casually who the woman in the guest of honor chair was. Petra's face did something complicated. She looked away too quickly and said she thought it was one of Delia's work friends. I smiled and moved on. I found Barbara in the far corner of the room talking to one of the aunts. I came up beside her and asked quietly if she knew who the woman sitting in the center chair was. Barbara turned to me, and there was that pause again, the long one, the deciding one. She said she believed her name was Simone and that she was a friend of the family. She said it in the way people say things when they are hoping you will not press further. I pressed further. I asked how Simone was connected to the family. Barbara said through Marcus, which is a thing she said while looking just slightly to the left of my face. I said through Marcus how. And Barbara said that Simone and Marcus had known each other for a while from his old job, she believed, and that she hoped I was not going to make things awkward. That word, awkward, she hoped I was not going to make things awkward. I looked at her for a moment. I looked at Barbara, the woman who had been calling me family for 7 years, the woman who had sat at my dinner table more times than I could count, the woman who had kissed my cheek at every holiday and told me she thanked God her son had found someone like me. I looked at her and I understood in the clearest and most terrible way that she knew, not suspected. Knew that she had known for some amount of time, and that her worry right now was not for me. Her worry was that I might disrupt the careful social arrangement she and Delia had made. I said nothing. I nodded slightly. I walked back toward the catering table and I picked up a glass of water and I drank it slowly, and I thought very clearly about what I was going to do next. What I decided to do in that moment was stay, not for them, not to keep the peace, not because I was too afraid or too small to leave. I stayed because I needed to see the full picture before I did anything. I had spent months choosing not to look clearly at things. This was the last time I was going to make that choice. If I was going to understand what had been built around me without my knowledge, I needed to be in that room. I needed to watch the behavior, see the relationships, feel the level of comfort people had with this woman, and understand how long this had been happening. So I stayed and I watched. I watched Simone accept compliments about her outfit from Delia's friends. I watched Delia come over and hug her warmly, the kind of warm hug you give someone you have already established a real friendship with. I watched Barbara refill Simone's drink and pat her shoulder. I watched Marcus's aunt lean in and say something to Simone that made both of them laugh. I watched the whole family behave with this woman the way you behave with someone who has been folded into your circle for a long time. And I watched myself in that room, the person who had paid the deposit, the person who had made the paper flowers, the person who had driven the cargo van and picked up the cake and hung the welcome sign, the person who was still, even now, making sure the catering was running on time and the favor bags were arranged properly. The person everyone called family when they needed something done and apparently called inconvenient when she was about to become a problem. I left for exactly 45 minutes in the middle of the shower. I told the coordinator I had a quick errand. I drove to my car, sat in the parking lot of the venue, and called my friend Yolanda. Yolanda has been my closest friend since college, and she is the kind of person who tells you the truth even when it is going to hurt you. I told her what I had walked into. I told her about Simone, about Barbara's face, about Delia's hug, about all of it. I heard the long exhale she made on the other end of the line, and I knew from that sound alone that the confirmation I needed was coming. Yolanda told me she had heard something 4 months ago. She said she had not brought it to me because she had not been certain and because she knew how much I had invested in my marriage and she did not want to break something real with a rumor. She said she was sorry. She said she had a name and that the name was Simone and that Simone worked in the events industry, which is why she had been slow to say anything to me because she worried it might connect back to my world and my business reputation. She said she was sorry again. She said she should have told me sooner. I sat in that parking lot and I breathed. I did not cry. I want to explain why I did not cry because I think it matters. I did not cry because something had become completely clear. Not just suspicion, not just pain, but actual clarity. The kind of clarity that feels cold and still and precise. When you have been confused for a long time and then suddenly everything clicks into position, there is a moment before the emotion where you can see everything as it actually is. I was in that moment. I went back inside, I finished the shower. I kept doing my job, which is something I am almost annoyed with myself for, but I also understand why I did it. I finished Bicao. See, the shower was not really about Delia anymore. It was not about Marcus or Simone or Barbara. It was about me. It was about what kind of person I was going to be in this moment, and I was not going to become chaotic or ugly or loud in a room full of people. That was not the ending I was going to give them. They did not get to turn me into a scene. When the shower ended, I packed up the decorations that belonged to me. I left the venue as calmly as I had arrived. I did not say goodbye to Barbara. I said a brief goodbye to Delia, just enough to not draw attention, and I drove home. Marcus was home when I arrived. He was on the couch watching something on television and he looked up at me with that easy smile and asked how the shower went. And I looked at him and I said it went fine. I said the flowers looked beautiful and the cake was perfect and everyone seemed to have a really good time. And then I set my bag down and I went into the kitchen and I started making notes. That is what Nadia does when she is ready, she makes notes. I am going to tell you about the next 3 weeks before I tell you what happened at the end. I think those 3 weeks are important because they show you who Nadia actually is when she is not being loud or reactive. Those 3 weeks were quiet on the surface. Marcus noticed nothing different. I kept our household running as I always had. I cooked. I responded to his messages normally. I went to my office and worked on my clients' events. I laughed at the right moments. I appeared entirely as I had always appeared. But underneath that surface, I was moving very carefully. First, I hired a private investigator. His name was a man named Carl, someone Yolanda had used 2 years earlier during her own divorce. Carl was methodical and professional, and he told me that in most cases like mine, 2 weeks was enough time to get a clear picture. He was right. What Carl brought me at the end of those 2 weeks was not a surprise, but it was a confirmation, and confirmation is a different thing than suspicion. Suspicion can be explained away. Confirmation cannot. Carl documented dates, times, locations, photographs, and phone records that had been accessed through legal means. The relationship between Marcus and Simone had been ongoing for approximately 2 years and 4 months. It had not begun as a casual encounter. It had a pattern, a regularity, a structure that indicated something that had been nurtured and maintained. 2 years and 4 months, that meant it had started during the year he told me his business was failing, during the year I covered the mortgage, during the year I told him that partnerships meant something. I sat with that information for one full day before I did anything else. Second, I contacted my attorney. Her name is Miriam and she is someone I had used previously for my business contracts. She was sharp and steady and she told me to gather every financial document I could access before anything changed. She told me about what I was entitled to as a spouse and she walked me through my options clearly. I listened to all of it. I asked specific questions. I left her office with a list of documents to compile and a clearer understanding of my legal position. Third, I began quietly separating things, not dramatically, not in a way anyone would notice. I moved portions of my personal business earnings to a separate account I had maintained since before the marriage, which Miriam had confirmed was my individual property. I photographed and cataloged items in our shared home. I retrieved documents from the filing cabinet in our home office, things related to our shared accounts, the mortgage, the car loan, the savings. I made copies of everything and kept them off-site. I did all of this calmly, completely calmly. I had become, in those 3 weeks, something I had never quite been before. Nadia the planner had always existed in my professional life, but this was the first time I had brought that version of myself fully into the personal space where I had always been softer, more hopeful, more willing to wait and see. That version of myself was quiet now. What had taken her place was clearer and sharper, and done with being gentle about things that did not deserve gentleness. On the 19th day after the baby shower, I had everything I needed. I made a decision about how I was going to have the conversation with Marcus. I thought carefully about where and when. I chose a Sunday afternoon when we would both be home and there was no event I was working, no outside obligation, no reason for either of us to need to leave quickly. I made a normal breakfast that morning. I sat at the table and we talked about nothing important, and he refilled his coffee and looked comfortable and completely unaware. After breakfast, I said his name. He looked up. I said I wanted to have a conversation and that I needed him to not interrupt until I was finished. The way his expression ch aimed in that moment was something I had not expected, and also something I had absolutely expected. It was the expression of someone who has been waiting on some level for the door to open, not relief exactly, more like a weight shifting. I told him what I knew. I did not tell him how I knew it. I told him the duration. I told him that I was aware of Simone and that I was aware she had been brought into the family circle in a way that involved people who knew me and who had made the choice not to tell me. I told him that the baby shower had been my final piece of evidence, not of his behavior, but of the behavior of the people around me. He did not deny it. I want to say that clearly because I think it changes the texture of everything that came next. Marcus did not try to lie. He sat across from me and he looked like a man who was tired of carrying something and had been looking for a place to set it down. He said he was sorry. He said it had not been his intention. He said that he had made choices he was not proud of and that he had not known how to come back from them. He said some other things. Some of them were probably genuine. Some of them were probably the things people say in that moment because they do not know what else to say. I let him finish. Then I said very simply that I had an appointment with an attorney and that I wanted to begin the separation process as soon as possible. I said I was not angry in the loud way. I said I had been sad for a long time without knowing why, and now that I knew why, I was mostly just clear. I said I hoped we could do this without making each other worse than we already felt. He nodded. He asked if he should leave the house. I said that would be appropriate and that I could give him time to arrange where he would go. He spent that night in the guest room. He left 2 days later with 2 suitcases and his laptop and the coffee maker that had been a gift from his mother. I sat in the kitchen after he left and I looked at the space where the coffee maker used to be, and I felt the strange lightness of a house that suddenly belongs to only one person. Not happiness, not grief exactly, something quieter, something that felt like the first honest exhale I had taken in years. Now I need to tell you about the conversation with Delia, because that conversation is its own chapter. Delia called me 4 days after Marcus left. I had not reached out to anyone in the family by that point. I had told my own family and Yolanda, but I had made no announcements, sent no messages, had no confrontations. I was giving myself the space to process before I engaged with the noise. But Delia called and I answered because there were things I needed to say to Delia that I had been waiting to say since the morning of the shower. The call started with Delia asking if I was okay, which was such a specifically wrong place to begin that I almost laughed. I said I was. She said she had heard from Marcus that things were difficult and that she wanted me to know she cared about me. I thanked her. Then there was a pause and I used that pause to begin. I told her that I needed her to understand something clearly. I told her that I had planned, funded, and physically constructed her baby shower. I told her that I had paid the venue deposit out of my own account. I told her about the cargo van. I told her about the hours I had spent on the paper flowers and the ribbon arch and the guest of honor chair. I told her that when I walked into that shower and saw Simone sitting in the chair I had made, I understood in that moment that she had known about the affair and had made a deliberate choice to include Simone in the family event that I had built. Delia said she could explain. I said I did not doubt that she had an explanation. I said I also did not need to hear it. She started anyway. She said that Simone had become a part of their lives over the past couple of years, and that it had been awkward because I was family but so was Marcus, and she had not wanted to choose. She said she had thought inviting Simone would be okay because I seemed strong, and she had not thought I would notice or care. I let that sentence exist in the air for a moment. She had not thought I would notice or care. I told her that I noticed everything. I told her that I had always noticed everything and that the people around me had mistaken my silence for blindness and my patience for permission. I told her that the venue deposit was $420 and that I would like it returned to me before the end of the week. I told her that the custom cake had cost $260 and that I had not been reimbursed for that either. I gave her the total, which was not only the deposit and the cake, but also the supply orders I had paid for in full, amounting to just under $1,400 in total that I had spent on a shower for a family that had seated the woman sleeping with my husband in a chair. I had decorated with my own hands. Delia was quiet. I told her I expected the money transferred by Friday. I told her that I wished her well with the baby because that was true. I did wish her well. The baby was an innocent person who had nothing to do with any of this. But I told her clearly that my relationship with her and with her family as a unit was one I was no longer going to invest in. She cried. I expected that she would. I stayed on the line while she cried because I am not a cruel person. When she was done, I said goodbye. She transferred the money on Thursday. The conversation with Barbara happened differently because Barbara did not call me. Barbara arrived at my house. She showed up at my door on a Tuesday morning, 11 days after Marcus had moved out, and when I opened the door, she was holding a casserole dish, which is the oldest and most specifically female form of arriving with a peace offering while refusing to acknowledge the war. I opened the door and I stood in the doorway. I did not step aside to let her in. This was deliberate. My home was my space now, and I was not automatically opening it to people who had participated in my humiliation. Barbara looked at the dish and then at me and said she hoped we could talk. I said she could say what she needed to say. She shifted the casserole dish and began. She said she was sorry that things had gone the way they had. She said she had been in a very difficult position because Marcus was her son and she did not want to cause trouble in his marriage, but she also could not end his friendship, meaning Simone, because it would have caused conflict between her and Marcus. She said she hoped I could understand that a mother's loyalty to her son was something she could not apologize for. I looked at her for a moment. Then I said that I understood her loyalty to Marcus completely. I said I had also been loyal to Marcus for 7 years, and that loyalty had included covering his mortgage for 8 months when his business failed, supporting his decisions, building a life alongside him in good faith. I said that what I did not understand, and what I was not going to pretend to understand, was how her loyalty to Marcus had also required her to accept Simone into family gatherings while I was present and contributing to those gatherings without my knowledge. I said that was not loyalty to a son. That was a choice to participate in my deception, and those were two different things. Barbara's mouth opened slightly. She looked like someone who had prepared for one kind of conversation and arrived at a completely different one. I told her that I had genuinely cared about her over the years we had known each other. I said that was true and I wanted her to know it because I thought it was important to be honest about what had been real. I told her that I could not, however, continue a relationship with someone who had looked me in the face at that shower and asked me not to make things awkward. I told her that the awkwardness had not been mine to manage. She stood on my porch for another minute. Then she said she was sorry, and for the first time in the conversation, she said it in a way that sounded less like social management and more like something that actually cost her something. I received it. I did not dismiss it, but I also did not open the door. I said I hoped she had a good day, then I gently, quietly closed the door. She left the casserole dish on the porch. I brought it inside later and ate the food because it was good food and waste is waste. The next piece of this story involves my business, and this is where things shifted in a direction I had not anticipated. About 3 weeks after Marcus moved out, I received a message through my business account from a corporate event planning inquiry. The company was looking for a lead planner for their annual employee appreciation event, which was a large-scale gathering they held every year for approximately 400 people. This was not a small inquiry. The budget attached to the initial message was significant, comfortably the largest single project my business had ever been offered. I responded professionally and scheduled a consultation call. On the call, the events director mentioned something in passing that made my heart do a strange, small jump. She said she had heard of my work through a colleague who had attended a private event I had planned the previous spring. She described the event. It was a dinner party I had done for a client in their home, a small and careful dinner that I had been very proud of. She said her colleague had not been able to stop talking about the quality of the details. That inquiry became a signed contract 3 weeks later. It was the largest contract my business had ever held. And the timing of it, landing right in the middle of the hardest season of my personal life, felt like the kind of thing you cannot plan and cannot explain and can only receive. I told Yola and DA about it over the phone, and she said that is what happens when you spend your energy on your work instead of on people who do not deserve it. I think she was partially right. I also think that 7 years of showing up and doing excellent work quietly had built something that was growing on its own, whether I was paying attention to it or not. Now I want to tell you about Simone, not because Simone is the villain of this story, because I do not actually think she is the primary villain. She made choices I do not respect, but the people who actually owed me something were the people who called themselves my family. Simone owed me nothing except perhaps the basic human decency of not positioning herself as a guest of honor at an event I had built. But I want to tell you about Simone because of what happened about 6 weeks after the shower. Simone reached out to me, not through Marcus, directly through my business social media account. She sent a message that began with, "I know this is unexpected and I want to say I am sorry." I read the whole message. She said she had not known initially the full extent of what Marcus had told her about his marriage. She said that by the time she understood the full picture, she had already developed feelings and had made choices she was not proud of. She said she had not been at the shower to disrespect me. She said she had been invited by Delia and Marcus, and that she had not fully understood what I had done to prepare that event until after the fact when someone told her. She did not ask for forgiveness. She did not ask to meet or talk. She said she just needed to say it to me directly and that she would not reach out again. I read that message 3 times, then I did not respond. I did not respond because I had no idea what I wanted to say, and I have learned that when I do not know what I want to say, it is better to say nothing than to say something half-formed. I also did not respond because it was not my job to make her feel absolved or confronted or anything at all. Whatever she was working through was hers to work through. I had enough of my own work in front of me. The divorce process moved at the pace those things move, which is not fast. Miriam guided me through it with the same steadiness she brought to my business contracts. Marcus was cooperative in a tired, deflated way. He did not fight over anything significant. He did not try to dispute the financial situation in a way that would have made things ugly. He had, I think, run out of the kind of energy that ugly fights require. What was left was a man trying to make something smaller because he had already made it very large in the wrong direction. There was one moment I need to tell you about because it is important to the full shape of this story. About 2 months into the process, Marcus called me one evening and asked if we could talk, not through the attorneys, just the two of us. I agreed. We met at a coffee shop near my office because I did not want him at the house. He sat across from me and he looked like someone who had been sleeping badly, which is a thing that is hard to fake. He said he had been thinking about a lot of things. He said he did not expect anything from me in terms of forgiveness or reconciliation. He said he wanted to ask me something honestly. He asked if I had been happy. I looked at him. I thought about the question carefully because it deserved a careful answer. Then I said that I had been committed. I said committed and happy were not always the same thing and that I had confused them for a long time or maybe chosen one over the other without admitting it. I said there had been genuine happiness, real moments, real warmth, real partnership. But I said that I had also spent a lot of years being the one who showed up in full while someone else showed up partially. And that is a kind of loneliness that is very hard to name when you are inside it. He nodded. He said he knew. He said he had known and had not known what to do with that knowledge except make it worse, which was not an excuse, and he knew it was not an excuse. I said it was not. We finished our coffee. I drove home alone. I sat in my car in my own driveway for a few minutes before going inside, not crying, just sitting, letting the weight of 7 years have a moment before I walked back into the house that was now only mine. I walked inside. I made tea. I sat at my kitchen table and I opened my notebook and I worked on the proposal for the corporate event because that was the real thing happening in my life now, and I was not going to spend more of my best energy on what was behind me. Here is what I need to tell you about the baby shower aftermath that took another month to fully surface. Delia had told people in the family that the shower had been tense because of me, that I had apparently caused a scene, which is a sentence I want to pause on because I did not cause a scene. I spoke to 2 people privately and I Inished the event and I left, but the story that circulated in the family group chat, which I was still in at that time, was that I had been difficult and that I had made Delia uncomfortable and that the mood of the shower had been affected by my attitude. I read these messages. I did not respond to them. I made a screenshot of each one, and then I left the group chat, which is not a dramatic act, it is just a boundary. The family noticed my departure from the group chat more than they had noticed anything else. 3 cousins sent me individual messages asking why I had left. One aunt left me a voicemail saying she hoped I was okay and that family was important. Marcus's cousin James, who I had always liked, sent me a message that just said, "I heard what happened at the shower and I am sorry. You deserved better." That message I answered. I said, "Thank you, James," I meant it. The business contract came through fully in the 5th month after the shower. I executed the corporate event with a team I had carefully assembled. It was 412 people, a ballroom setting, 3 hours of programming, a dinner service, an award segment, custom printed materials, and a photo experience area. Everything ran exactly as it should. The events director called me afterward and said it was the best execution of that event in the 6 years they had held it. I am going to tell you something about that phone call. When I hung up, I sat at my desk in the quiet of my office and I felt something I had not felt cleanly in a very long time. I felt like myself, not the version of myself that had been quietly shrinking to keep other people comfortable, not the version that had been making paper flowers until midnight for a family that would seat a stranger in the chair I had built. The version that had started this business at a kitchen table with one laptop and a notebook full of ideas and had kept going until it became something real. That version, she was still there, she had been there the whole time. Now I want to tell you about the last piece of this story because it is the part that closes the circle. 8 months after the shower, Delia had her baby, a girl. I found out through the family group chat that I had rejoined briefly because of an unrelated family matter. I saw the announcement. I sent a simple message of congratulations and meant it because a new baby is a new person and new people do not inherit the mistakes of the ones who came before them. 2 weeks after the baby was born, Barbara called me. I answered because I had decided some time before that I was not going to screen calls from people I had once genuinely cared about. I would answer and I would decide in the moment. Barbara asked how I was. I said I was well. She said she was glad. Then she said that she wanted to tell me something. She said that she had been thinking since the baby came, since seeing new life in the family, about the things she had not handled well. She said she had not handled her relationship with me well. She said she had let herself be pulled in a direction she was not proud of and that she had made choices that had prioritized her own comfort over my well-being and that she knew that. I listened. She said she missed having me around. She said the family missed me in the way you miss someone who was genuinely good to you. She said she hoped that someday there might be a way to have some kind of relationship, even if it was smaller than what we had before. I thought about what I wanted to say. I thought about the 7 years I had spent being a part of that family. I thought about the casserole dish on the porch and the careful conversation where I had told her the door was closing. I thought about the version of Nadia who would have rushed to forgive because being forgiven and accepted was something she needed. I thought about the version I was now. I told Barbara that I did not wish her harm. I said that genuinely. I told her that I thought the things she had said were true and that it took something to say them. I told her that I could not promise that our relationship would be what it was because that relationship had been built on a version of me that was willing to absorb more than I should have, and I was not that version anymore. I said that I was open to being decent and respectful when our paths crossed, and I said that was an honest and real thing to offer. She said that was more than she deserved. I said yes, but I also said it was what I had. We ended the call. I sat for a while. I thought about what it means to forgive something without returning to the place where you were hurt. I thought about the difference between releasing bitterness and reopening a door. I had worked hard to release the bitterness because bitterness is weight and I was done carrying weight for people who were not carrying anything for me. But releasing the weight was not the same as going back. Going back would have required them to have changed in the ways that mattered, and I was too clear-eyed now to pretend I could see that from where I stood. The corporate contract led to a referral. The referral led to 2 more clients. By the end of that year, my business had grown to the point where I needed to hire a second coordinator and expand my operating space. I rented a small studio, nothing extravagant, just enough room for a team and a proper workspace. I painted it myself one weekend with Yolanda, who brought snacks and a playlist and made me laugh until my stomach hurt. I put a framed piece of the hand-lettered welcome sign I had made for Delia's shower on the wall of my new office. Not out of bitterness, out of accuracy. That sign represented real skill and real effort, and it belonged in a place where real skill and real effort were being honored. I want to tell you one final thing about Nadia, about me. I am not someone who thinks the only way to survive a painful thing is to emerge from it completely without marks. I have marks. I have a year of confusion that I could have shortened if I had trusted myself sooner. I have a marriage that I genuinely believed in that turned out to have been a shared belief only on one side. I have a relationship with a family I cared about that will never be what it was. These things are real and they left real impressions. But I also have a business that I built before, during, and after all of it. I have a home that is quiet and mine. I have a friend like Yolanda who tells me the truth and also brings excellent snacks. I have a version of myself that no longer mistakes kindness for the absence of limits. I know now that you can be warm and generous and open-hearted and also be someone who will not stay in a room where you are not being treated honestly. Those two things are not contradictions. That took me longer to understand than I wish it had. The baby shower was the day the quiet finally became loud enough inside me that I could not turn it down anymore. The chair I had made with my own hands, given to someone else. The family I had fed and planned for and driven cargo vans for, circled around a woman they had been protecting at my expense. The husband who had come home easy and smiling from a life he was running alongside mine without telling me. I did not flip a table, I did not post a breakdown online, I did not send a group text that burned every bridge in one message. I did what Nadia does. I got quiet, I got clear, I got my documents in order, and then when I was ready, I made choices that were mine to make. The seat of honor at my own life was always mine to claim. I just had to stop letting other people sit in it. I walked out of that shower with my paper flower samples in a bag and my dignity still attached. I walked into a year that asked more from me than I had ever been asked. And I walked out of that year with my business growing, my name on my own lease, and a clarity about myself that I would not trade for anything they could have given me if they had simply been honest. Nadia is not a woman who breaks. Nadia is a woman who finally, when the evidence is complete and the picture is fully clear, chooses herself, every time. Nadia stayed quiet for a long time in that room. She saw everything clearly and she chose her moment instead of reacting to theirs. If you have ever been in a room where you suddenly understood that the people around you had known something important and chosen not to tell you, I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me what you did. Tell me what you wish you had done differently. And if this story stayed with you, if Nadia's journey through that year meant something to you, make sure you are here for the next one. Because Nadia always comes back and the next chapter is already building.